What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today I'm going to talk about Pillow Talk, which is Doris Day, Rock Hudson, and Tony Randall, Thelma Ritter. It's celebrating its 65th anniversary today. In 2024, 65 years old. And I did too many anniversaries. It's probably, yeah, I don't know. You may get this in January. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, so I found this with audio description and watched it, and it's funny how a lot of older titles benefited either from, I guess TCM trying to go through things, or I love those Department of Education ones. Like this year, I also reviewed the Santa Claus, which I thought was so weird. Disney benefited from the Department of Education doing the Santa Claus. I was like, why? um, but yeah, the Department of Education, and if you listen to it on Disney Plus, it's the Department of Education's, and sometimes you find that. So if Hello Talk rotates onto a streaming service for your thing, maybe I'll have audio description. That's all I'm doing. Anyway, um, so this is a cute rom-com that has oddly stood the test of time, 65 years, I would say. There are enough people who like Pillow Talk, but it's not a top tier. It has held on enough while you know that there are other rom-coms from this time period that have fallen completely out of fashion. It's like just totally gone. Just people don't even remember them. There are probably some like tier like right below this where the people who are around in this time periods are still sort of remembering them, or who 1959 movies were not that far removed, so they've seen more of them and they weren't like fully reliant upon TCM to do so. Um, and probably some tier just like right below Pillow Talk, but Pillow Talk has kind of held on. Doris Day is great. It's got Rock Hudson, ever ever Hollywood leading man, the straightest man you'll ever know, playing women. Women were just so attracted to him. Um, and Tony Randall's great here as this Jonathan character. So basically, if you watch this movie with anyone younger that looks younger than me, or even my age, you may have to explain to them what a party phone is. That's going to be like the biggest thing in them enjoying this movie, I think, is the understanding what a party phone is. This is one of those movies that didn't age well because it's centered around something that no longer exists, and you have to like explain what that is. Like I think about movies nowadays, and I'm like, man, like a generation from now, people won't even know what like faxing is. Some movies that are like based around getting a fax, people are like, what is that? What is this thing? You know, um, it's sort of like floppy disks. Like there was a movement to change the save button from an old school floppy disk because nobody knew what it was. Like coming up in the world. It had been so long since we'd used one that nobody knew what it was. So, yeah, I think when we talk about party lines, I think that's something that people are going to be like, what? But anyway, because Doris Day and Rock Hudson essentially share this phone line, like when one's on the phone, the other one can't be. So she's upset by it because he's up all hours of the night just talking to women over the phone, and she can't use the phone and she's in this distress. She even goes to like the phone company and hires gets like a phone investigator. Like she tells the phone company, she's like, "Oh, he's just awful. The things that he says is just, oh, and I can't be on the phone." And they're like, "Oh, we'll send an investigator." And so you're like, "Wait a minute, they could do that back in the day." Could you imagine going to like AT&T now and being like, "I need a phone investigator"? They'd be like, "No, we don't do that. I'm sorry." um, so yeah, somebody does go over to his apartment, and I was like, "We need to talk to you about your phone usage." Of course, it's a woman who's like instantly attracted to Rock Hudson. Is like, "Oh my god." Oh, and he's like, "Well, why don't you come on in? We'll talk about it." He's just like this whole thing is like hinging upon Rock Hudson being like the sexiest man alive, and like women just being like, "Oh my god." There's even a line in there where like I think it was Thelma Ritter's character that said it to Doris Day, where she said something about him being like, 6'6" and handsome doesn't come around every day. And I was like, he's not 6'6". Yeah. People in Hollywood are not allowed to be 6'6", you know. Um, yeah, like everybody in Hollywood is really short. Start that Googling height of some of these actors, and you'll find out just how tall Vin Diesel really is. Even though he didn't look like it in movies. Action star Vin Diesel, not very tall. Tom Cruise, not very tall. Which means that their co-stars cannot always dwarf them. And yeah, we do. I've heard of, the standing on boxes thing. Michael J. Fox was used to have to stand on a lot of boxes to get up to the same height of his female co-star, and they just would shoot him like above the waist, and you wouldn't know that he was standing on something. Some actors use lifts and stuff like that so they can match their partners, but it's just a lot easier to cast a whole bunch of short people or shorter people. So yeah, 6'6". No, he's not 6'6". Um, nice try though. And he he's also like a writer. She's a interior designer, and basically they both are working for this Jonathan guy who's Tony Randall's character, who's like a millionaire, divorced several times. He's really interested in Doris Day, but he also really wants Rock Hudson to finish writing this show that he's dumping money into. And Doris just keeps ignoring his advances. She's like, "I don't love you. We're just good friends, Jonathan. Why can't you just accept that?" That's my Doris Day accent. I hope it wasn't. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was uncanny, actually. Subscribe for uncanny Doris Day accents. Anyway, Rock Hudson goes out, and he has this conversation with Jonathan where Jonathan tells him about this girl that he's in love with, but it's this girl that he's been having this fight with over his phone, and he's like, "Well, it can't be her." And Jonathan's like, "No, she's radiant." I mean, he's just so. If you've ever watched Frasier, it's like the earlier seasons when like Niles, like, was super horny for Daphne, like when he like couldn't control himself. That's sort of what Jonathan feels like. But yet restrained. It's really important to note that Jonathan is a gentleman who is restrained for like 99% restrained, because there's another character here I'll talk about in a minute. So Rock Hudson, I guess, decides, he's like, well, obviously now I have to fuck this woman, so I guess that's his plot. I don't know. He hasn't. So he tries to go out on a date with her, but she won't have the time of day with him because she knows what his voice sounds like. She's never seen him before, but she knows his voice, and she knows his name. And well, he's like, "Well, but she's never seen me before, and I'm literally the hottest fucking thing in this movie. So I'm just going to change my name and get a Texan accent and pretend that I'm visiting from Texas," which is exactly what he does. And then he hits on Doris Day, and Doris Day is like, "Oh my god." Oh. And of course, he's so good with women that it all works out. All he needed to do was flip in an accent in there and change a name. And Doris is just like, "Oh, I love you." Of course, Doris Day doesn't have to do anything. She never has to change herself. She is who she is. It was just him that needed to realize he was the one that needed to change, basically, his opinion of who she was. He had this opinion of who she was, because essentially her comments are valid. He does use the phone a shit ton of the time, so that's really her complaint. And it's always to another lady, and he's just always on the phone to women, just all the time. And just, like, is this necessary? She can't make business calls or anything. So, um, and she loves living by herself and her independence. She loves being able to go out and date other men and then still come home, and she has her own life. So, and she loves working. So she's a great working lady. But this movie also sends a lot of mixed messages about, this movie is still one of those things where it's like, oh, you should find a man. Oh, wouldn't it be great? Oh, men are great. Oh, aren't you tired of like coming home to a house by yourself? Oh my God, I really want to go home and have a man. Don't just walk up onto a street and take a man home. It doesn't work. Like, there are just so many of those references. This is very much one of those things where it's like, a woman's place is with a man in the home. Preferably, if we could, that would be great. So, but it's also a quasi musical in that there are actually like a couple songs here that are sung within the movie, not like in the soundtrack. Like Doris sings. They're like, we have Doris Day, she must sing. We have to have Doris Day sing in this movie. So they find ways of her to do that in sort of a clunky way. Like this year I also celebrated the 65th anniversary of Rio Bravo, which features Dean Martin. And they sort of do the same thing. There's Dean Martin and I forgot the name of the kid that's in there too. But they were both singers. And so there's this moment where they just kind of stop and they let both of them sing a song. It's like an old Western song, but it's like in the middle of this Western. And you're like, what are we doing? This is so weird. So yeah, it's a musical without being a musical because they're like, well, we have Doris Day. Why not? When in Rome. So, and it sort of predictably goes where you think it's going to go, where Jonathan realizes that his friend has decided to be this guy, this fake man that the girl that he's in love with that doesn't love him. And so he sticks his nose in there and messes everything up. And I'm sure, of course, you're right. Doris Day, she'll be independent on her own. This is all about independent and being a strong woman on your own. That's, of course, what the message here is in 1959. She won't forgive Rock Hudson for all of his misdeeds. Of course not. You know what? I would have liked this movie more if she'd ended up with Jonathan. Just like a little bit more. I'd be like, that's a bold choice. But because he's not like the worst person in the world. He's not the most likable person, but clearly not meant to be the choice at the end anyway. So, although he does drive her 80 miles while she cries in the car, it's like, God, that's a lot of time. I know they're trying to make a gag out of it. I was like, that is a long time. She really is crying for a long time in the car. Just damn. So yeah, it's cute. It's fine. It's sort of inconsequential. It's fluff. And it's a nice performance from Doris Day. It's a nice performance from Rock Hudson. It's a nice performance from Tony Randall. If you want to see a sort of a nice movie from 1959, this was never going to be like an A romantic comedy. This is not Breakfast at Tiffany's. I told you this was not top tier. This isn't something where you're going to feel like, oh my God, this stood the test. And even if Breakfast at Tiffany's has like a big, giant wart in it that it can't get rid of. It desperately needs to. It desperately needs to, like, things where you're like, oh, times were different. Not that different. Who the ever gave... If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Who's cast in a role that they should never have been cast in. But yeah, so Pillow Talk has sexual assault in it, which is fun. Attempted sexual assault is always fun. She has another client that's like an older lady that she's seen, and when she's leaving at the end of the day, the woman's son is taking her home, and he's younger than Doris, is mentioned, and he pulls over and tries to, like, I'm just gonna say put the moves on her, but like gets up all on her, and nothing obviously happens because this is like 1959, and I think we still had the code back then. When did the Hays Code stop? but she has to like sort of playfully push him off. She's like, now stop. Now what do you do? If you don't stop, I'm gonna tell your mother. It's very just sort of like, um, I just wanted her, like just like a slap, just like beat the crap out of this guy, kick him, get out of the car. Like I wanted stuff that we do now in movies. Like if this dude was if we remade this movie now, the scene could not happen the way that it happens. Like with him being like, "Oh, right, fine, don't, I'll just drive you home," and her just sitting in the car and being like, "Well, I guess I'll do." No, the girlfriend walked off, got a fucking Uber, you know. Like, get the fuck out of here. Call 911 on her cell phone, something like. Um. So yeah. So yeah, it's got a scene that did not hold up. Um. And I'm not gonna like downgrade it because of party lines. I mean, I'm just letting you know. If you try to like educate your kids to film, you're gonna have to actually explain what that is. So, since a lot of the movie hinges on it, they won't even understand. Like they'll be like, "Wait, what?" But do they? I don't understand. Like, because we don't even have house phones anymore, so people don't even pick up. For the most part, you don't even pick up the phone to find out somebody's on it anymore, like inside your own home. So to understand that somebody else who you don't live with could have been on your line, I'm sure will blow somebody's mind. Sort of like the little save icons that people are now lobbying to get rid of, that are on the save icon is a floppy disk, but there are a lot of people who want it to not be, to get rid of it. And maybe we did get rid of it. I don't know, but I remember that being a thing, and people were like, "Well, we don't know what it is, so it's old fashioned. We need to get rid of it." And it's like, wow, I mean, soon we're gonna have things in movies like fax machines, and nobody's gonna know what that is. And there's so many like little gadgets that are very like of the moment that you're just like, damn. So yeah, Pelotalk. Really nice audio description track. I'm really I love when older movies have audio description and I can find them out there and be able to talk about them. But I'm gonna give Pelotalk a B plus. It's a nice rom com. That scene makes me uncomfortable in the way that it's played. It's played in 1959 sentimentalities. Other than that, I didn't really have too many problems with the movie. So uh, yeah, if you want to watch Peloton, watch Peloton. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the other side.